From the Cactus KCTS-FM Phoenix, I'm Jameson Greenwood with Greenwood & Company. Well, I hope everybody's been having a good week. We're already 3 weeks into February. It's not like the holiday season like Christmas or December where we have Hanukkah and Christmas and all of these different holidays going on. We do have quite a few in February, though. I mean, Wednesday was Ash Wednesday, of course, and looks like it was also the first day of Ramadan. Tuesday before that was Mardi Gras, and then, of course, we have Valentine's Day and the Super Bowl. Now, Super Bowl Sunday was a couple weeks ago, but I remember one Super Bowl when I was up in northern Arizona that lingered around a bit, at least one particular memory of it, but in the end, I think it led to one of my greatest regrets. But just to make sure that I don't overanalyze it, how about we devote the entire show to that very topic? Regardless of whether a Christian is an Episcopalian, a Methodist, Pentecostal, or Catholic, clergy across all denominations have to be especially careful to keep their sermons abbreviated on Super Bowl Sunday. The game usually doesn't start until 3 to 4 in the afternoon, at least in Arizona, but most Americans, even if they're not in a hurry to get to a party, are in a hurry to get some sort of snack platter or a 6-pack of Coors to share with their friends as they stand at attention, cheer, or fall backwards in defeat on their couches. I was never a big sports fan, and I regret to say that the only thing that really had any interest for me was the cheerleaders. And I often established growing up that when I began to live on my own, I would spend Super Bowl Sundays going out to dinner by myself at a restaurant with no TVs and would write poetry, the most unsportsmanesque thing a person could do. Unless you're the guy that wrote Casey at the Bat, but that's another topic for another time. However, when I began attending college in the Arizona High Country and joined St. Edward's Episcopal Church, I was blessed to have an engagement on Super Bowl Sunday and every Sunday. The college ministry chapel service and dinner held every night. The service on Super Bowl Sunday featured the typical Epiphany season readings from the Psalms, the Epistles, and the Gospel of Mark, but this particular Sunday was unique in the sending hymn we sang after communion. Heather sat at the piano as Jorge, the chaplain, said our blessing, but passed out pieces of paper to each of us. "The Lord bless and keep you," the chaplain said. "The Lord's face shine upon you, and carry you past the goalposts. Our sending hymn has the lyrics on this paper." At which point Heather began to play Dropkick Me Jesus through the goalposts of life. Being raised among reserved Presbyterians, I had never heard such a spiritual, and I wasn't entirely certain about it being a spiritual, but I wasn't sure it wasn't either. However, what impressed me was not only the song itself, but the fact that Heather was able to play it on the piano, a talent I was not previously aware of. Being a musical theater major, I knew she was passionate about vocal performance, but I never knew she had any talent for 88 ebony and ivory keys. We all applauded Heather's singing and playing before Jorge commended us to "go in peace to love and serve the Lord." We all responded, "Thanks be to God! Alleluia, alleluia!" One of the last times we could praise the Lord until Easter celebrated the resurrection and allowed us to shout it again. From there we went to the fellowship hall where I sat next to Annabelle and ate dinner. "Will I see you at Brew-Becks on Thursday?" I asked her. At that time she was performing at Brew-Becks, our other gathering spot besides St. Edward's, every Thursday night, and most Saturdays as well. "Can't this week," she said. "I've got a recital." "Well, I'd be happy to go," wanting to be around the girl I was so fond of. "It's down in Sierra Vista," she said. "Oh." I was disappointed, as I loved seeing Annabelle perform at Brew-Becks on Thursday nights and listening to her audio acrobatics as I went back and forth between composing poems and stories and admiring her lemonade hair and sage-green eyes. Moreover, I feared a budding boy in Sierra Vista stealing her away from me, an occupational hazard of having such a debilitating crush on someone. "I won't be able to come, but it's okay, Jimmy," Annabelle smiled. "We'll be doing a lot of the same songs when we come back." "Will you play Begin the Beguine?" I asked. This was a song that was a favorite of Grammy Benson, and one of the first ones I ever heard Annabelle play. "For you and your Grammy, I will," she smiled. "Just promise me you'll be careful," I said, wanting to express some sense of love without giving away an awkward revelation of my true feelings. "I'll be fine. You'll be sending me good vibes, she winked at me. Annabelle and Heather drove me home in their Subaru Forester, and we all went about the rest of our weeks. I went to Brew-Becks that Thursday night, and Annabelle's absence crushed me a bit. But I did see an impressive trio called Las Tres Maracadoras. Glenda from Puerto Rico played the piano and the xylophone. Sandra from Spain played the maracas and did the backup vocals, and Miranda from Guadalajara did the main vocals. They had a rocking-style piano and an engaging Latin rhythm reminiscent of Xavier Cugat or Raul Agras, which brought about thoughts of chile rellenos and sopapillas with strong Brazilian black coffee. When I heard that they would be returning the next night, I went again to Brew-Becks on Friday, but I noticed that Glenda, who played the piano, had her left hand in a cast. It turned out Las Tres Maracadoras had to switch hotels the night before because somehow there was a beehive in the TV cabinet at their first lodgings, which, first of all, how does that happen? Can someone please provide me an explanation of that? If you have to write the KCTS email, it's already been approved. But poor Glenda got stung on her hand at least twice. Then she twisted her wrist that she got stung while trying to get her suitcase down the stairs because the elevator was broken. They were determined not to let their scheduled gig at Brew-Becks go, but now Glenda couldn't play the piano. And we also can't go any further on the story because we've reached a point where we have to take a short break. But once we come back, we will figure out what Las Tres Maracadoras were going to do now that they had no piano player. You are listening to Greenwood and Company on KCTS. Hello, I'm Jameson Greenwood. If you enjoy Greenwood and Company, be sure to follow and share wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back with more Greenwood and Company right after this. Hello, I'm Ranger Powell with Forest Canyon Bank and Trust. Do you make a lot of equity in your brokerage accounts, but you want a way to hide it so Uncle Sam can't get his portion? That's where Forest Canyon's low-yield savings account comes in. Our exclusive CDs and saving accounts start at 0.000000009%, so any increases in value are not enough to mess with, and Uncle Sam won't suspect a thing. And if you made a bad trade that you need to write off, our exclusive savings account with the negative 5% interest rate is just the thing you need to make your losses seem that much more catastrophic. Talk about low taxes. So for all your banking, investing, and money laundering needs, come on down to Forest Canyon Bank and Trust. Tell them Ranger Powell sent you. Forest Canyon Bank and Trust is not insured by the FDIC and does not guarantee immunity from charges surrounding tax fraud. May also get you arrested for manslaughter in Mississippi if a prosecutor is bored and needs something to do. And welcome back. You are listening to Greenwood and Company on the Cactus, KCTS. Now, before the break, Las Tres Maracadoras had run into trouble because Glenda had been stung on her hand and also twisted her wrist while carrying her suitcase down a flight of stairs and couldn't play the piano. So all three members of the band were asking about if anyone knew how to play, but they couldn't find anyone. I wanted to play when I was a kid, but I didn't want to practice, which doesn't work very well when you're trying to master a musical instrument. Then I remembered what happened on Sunday when Heather played and sang Dropkick Me Jesus. Heather was working the counter that night by herself because Colton had some type of flu bug that was bothering him, and we weren't sure what it was. He probably tripped himself while getting out of bed, too. He is wont to do that. So I thought, though, that Heather could play. I turned and asked her if she would be willing to cover for Glenda, but was surprised when she responded, "Well, Jimmy, Dropkick Me Jesus is the only song I know how to play on the piano. I can play some other songs, but not super well. It's only improvisational jazz," I told her. "Can you at least give it a try?" I really wanted to see the Maracadoras perform and wasn't really considering Heather's sake, which wasn't the right thing to do, and I even began to fear later that it would spoil my chances of winning her cousin Annabelle, given I had mistreated Heather. Heather wasn't sure, but Glenda offered a compromise. "I'll handle the melody if you can just handle the bass notes." Heather agreed with hesitation, so they went to the grand piano to practice a few songs. They did La Guarachera, Mambo No. 8, the Jamaican Rumba, etc., etc. They weren't perfect, but not half bad either. Rehearsing and practicing is one thing, as no one will see it, but when it comes time to actually go in front of the live audience, even the most talented, well-rehearsed, and dedicated thespians become nervous. Sure, the brightness of the stage lights makes seeing the audience almost impossible, and if you're one enough with your words or music, you forget that you're performing, but if the rehearsal is something you've only done once before, and you were only given the script in the morning, you will be unsure of your performance. And I started feeling horrible for putting Heather on the spot, but she and the Maracadoras did really well, and everybody applauded, sometimes even giving them standing ovations after various numbers. Their music, however, did have some bizarre qualities, as rather than a tradition of songs sometimes starting with a slow intro then shifting into a peppy, exciting main section, these songs started fast as the Maracadoras began their intros, but as Heather struggled to follow on her end of the piano, they slowed their beats a bit, which created an interesting effect of some of the peppy sounds of Mambo No. 8 and La Dolce Vita, changing to songs in a gray middle ground between slow dance and peppy numbers. Not perfect, but not horrible. Just a different take on Latin jazz. Heather, however, seemed terrified the whole time, turning to Glenda for reassurance. In the process of making the music, Glenda was not necessarily able to provide the words of reassurance needed, providing only smiles. Heather would turn, implying, "I can't do this." Glenda would smile, "You're doing fine." Heather, "Slow down." Glenda, "You're doing fine." Heather, "I need you to play louder." Glenda, "You're doing fine." Heather, "I'm in a state of asystole." Glenda, "You're doing fine." Now, for those of you who are not as well versed in medicine, asystole occurs when a person has no discernible cardiac activity. That means there is no heartbeat. In other words, a person in asystole is dead. Even if it wasn't because I was hopelessly in love with her cousin, I felt a tearful sense of guilt for what I'd put Heather through. I only wanted to hear a nice dose of Latin jazz, but if I had known this experience would be such torture for her, I never would have begged her to get on stage. At one point, they decided to take an intermission, at which time Heather's friends Michael and Brianna came by with their dog Sondheim. Michael, in contrast to Heather, was a skilled piano player, and he offered to take over for Heather. The rest of that evening, Glenda joined Miranda on vocals, and Heather, somewhat embarrassed, went back to the counter to help take orders for various coffees, teas, and pastries. I still feared Heather would tell Annabelle I had put her on the spot, which would make Annabelle erase me from her list of potential soulmates, but mostly I wallowed in my regret about Heather. I was trying to help her have confidence and even prayed that Jesus would drop-kick her through this goalpost based on the song she'd played with such talent, and though Heather would forgive me by next Sunday, I would spend days afterward thinking I had failed in this test of a friendship. But I ended up getting what I deserved later that night. While Heather was putting some stuff away in the kitchen, Melissa, who is the shift supervisor at Brew-Becks, came to watch the counter, and I did not see her come by. But when Michael and las Tres Maracadoras had finished another song, I took a sip of my coffee when Melissa asked me from behind if I needed a refill. This startled me. My drink went down the wrong pipe, and I spilled the entire cup of coffee on the khaki cargo pants I was wearing. There's no use crying over spilled milk, but I suppose spilled coffee can in fact be a form of atonement. You are listening to Greenwood and Company on KCTS. It may be an ordinary day out in the grassy fields of Boiver's Dairy Farm, but Kenzie the Jersey and Kenna the Holstein and their friends are excited to share their custom Boiver's Farm milk. and all the good things made from it just for your refrigerator. Pick up a pint, a quart, or a gallon of our 1%, 2%, or whole milk. Bottled right here in Arizona and sweetened with high fructose corn syrup and menthol for that addictive taste. Also available in chocolate and strawberry varieties, flavored with coffee and rooster blood, and made impossible to resist with trace amounts of crack cocaine. And if your bread or toast need a little something extra, make sure to buy a loaf of our canola oil and trans fat infused butter. Churn the old-fashioned way in Pilgrim-style barrels with zero consideration given for food safety and prevention of bacterial infection. And as the temperatures creep up toward 3 digits in the summer, try our custom churned ice cream, available in 15 different flavors with rock salt and liquid nitrogen for a fast-melting summer treat. Salmonella and E. coli included at no extra charge. For all your dairy needs, be like Kenzie and Kenna. Choose Boivers Dairy. Available throughout the Southwest at Giggett supermarkets and other subpar retailers. Support for Greenwood and Company and the Cactus KCTS comes from the Society for Cats with Mathematics Test Anxiety, along with support from the Save the Floppy Disks Foundation and the Folding Chair Charitable Trusts. Well, in thinking about Las Tres Maracadoras, I think of the maracas, which a lot of us played with even when we were kids, and I think of all of the different rhythm instruments and some of the instruments that we wouldn't think of as percussion, like making beat noises, that actually are percussion, like the xylophone or the piano. And I decided to kind of look at them and examine them in this piece which I call the Percussion Poem. The 7-letter alphabet of music is absent from these background instruments, keeping time and beat, maintaining flavor, often in pairs. From drumsticks, rhythm sticks, and mallets to strike the two timbales. Yet often hands are all that's needed to hit the congas, beat the bongos, shake the maracas, or snap the Spanish castanets. All they do is make the beat and rhythm. They do so much with very little. Like the 7-letter alphabet of music makes millions of songs, so a tap, a shake, a snap, a beat can color an exquisite auditory canvas. Yet other objects tapped can make magic of all 7 letters and sometimes sharps and flats between, of xylophones and vibraphones and marimbas, multiple tones of sight and sound, silent beauty untouched, yet a grand pint-sized symphony when struck with felt-covered mallets at just the right force. Unlike planks of wood in a spectrum of colors, a stringed percussion's cousin black and white keys produce, a product far from binary. Different scales of 7-letter sounds as wide as its xylophone cousins. With the backing of the toneless percussion, noted pianos, marimbas, xylophones, and the vibraphones, with or without the musical alphabet, build beats into rhythms, rhythms into songs, sounds of beauty, whether alone or together. That brings an end to this week's Greenwood and Company. Our show was created and hosted by yours truly and was written by him along with James Salison and Minnesota Martinez. The engineer is Ivan Crosby. Jonas Andrews answers the phones even though we don't take calls on this program. The theme was composed by Martin Landstrom, and our costumes are provided by Grandma's Garage Thrift Shop. All the characters, settings, and situations depicted in this program, along with all advertised products, are entirely fictional, and any similarities to products, events, or persons, living or dead, is entirely coincidental. Also, KCTS is not an actual radio station. Be sure to visit our website at jamesongreenwoodpodcast.com to learn more about Greenwood and Company, and make sure to follow us on the podcast platform of your choice and share with your friends on social media. Just a reminder to please be careful if you are going out on the 101, the 17, or Route 66 tonight. I'm Jameson Greenwood, and until we meet again, stay healthy, stay safe, and stay young at heart. Good night. This is KCTS FM Phoenix. Stay tuned for Lacking in Substance.